Today, classic meets cutting edge. I'm pushing design, fitting a Tremec T56 Magnum with exceptional firewall integration. This isn't going to be your everyday how-to video. This is a journey into innovation, craftsmanship, and a one-of-a-kind detail. But the real question is, can I pull this off? It's easy to get overwhelmed by a big task. So break it down into bite-sized chunks and get moving. The first chunk, the raised tunnel, needs to marry up to the hump. I'm going to copy the factory profile and fab a new piece out of 18 gauge sheet metal. I could just section this piece and move it up, but I want to keep it intact to maintain overall integrity. Keeping the piece large, so I have a lot of flexibility to shape it to fit. Form the radius bends over a like-sized pipe. Test fitting the first chunk, which is simply an extension of the raised tunnel, matching the detail of the factory hump. Everything is looking good. I marked this in place inside the car and measured out 1 inch. I'm going to cut along that line. It's going to be my new face, and I'll slip it in the bead roller and jog that lip. Looking good. I've rolled the floor back under. You can see it's still high, about 3 inches. I can't drop it down or come closer until I clearance my panel. See, it's making contact with the toe board there. So once I trim it to fit, I'll be able to push the floor into its spot and then lower it down. Begin to see how tight everything really is.
No! No!
Well, good thing I got the steel bell housing, because it was no worse for wear for that tumble. Aluminum might not have been so fortunate, but regardless, looking good. Just got to trim a bit more and then level the floor out to the rockers and see what we're up against. I've set a remnant of the tunnel hump in place to give you a sense of what I plan to do. The infamous squiggle, as I'm fond of calling it. It's flat on top and rolls off at the edges. This factory detail was out of necessity. All that stretched metal from the firewall stamping needed to be gathered somewhere. But this bead also added some strength. I used this as inspiration for the shape of my cross tube, adapted the detail for the smooth firewall while ensuring the needed clearances for the T56. When the tube gets tied back to my planned cage, the overall assembly will be way more rigid and, equally important, look like it belongs to the car. The next piece is this curved panel that mates down to the extension of the tunnel. That curved piece will transition up to the tube and marry to the firewall. Felt it was time to validate my assumptions around the fit of this T56. Up until now, all my planning assumptions have only been based off of research and indirect measurements. I have the driveline angle set to 1 degree. Given the remnant of the old hump, I can't raise the transmission much further. So I set the height to a nice round number. It needs to come up 4 inches to be in proper position. And with the hump leveled across, I have about 4.5 inches down to the shifter plate and a little under 4 inches to the top of the shifter. That'll just tuck in under the hump, and my opening for my shifter, that'll just slightly protrude through. Perfect! I introduced a new bead roll for some added rigidity, and metal stretched this edge to create the curved flange to marry up to the next chunk. More art, less science, just some simple guidelines to help reference the sheet as I bend it over a larger diameter one. Here's the progression of the piece. Very pleased so far. On the driver's side, here where the stock accelerator bracket was mounted, I'll need to fill in here. The dashed white lines indicate where it'll angle back and mate up to that corner radius. The passenger side is more straightforward. We haven't messed with the height of the toe board, so it's simply aligning that curved panel to the tube. I'm not planning to attach this radius piece to the tube. I'm going to create an intermediate piece with a stretched flange that will come down and marry to this radius. So a third piece, my next chunk, that becomes the transition from the tube to this curved panel. Now it's getting tricky. I'm going to share my thinking. So where do you start? Well, you start with what you know. So what do I know? I know that my flush firewall needs to transition around this tube to the inside of the car. Do I know how this bends and transitions to my central piece? Kinda, but not with any sort of certainty. Depends how it fits. But I do know my bar or tube is fixed, so that's where we're going to start. The double line is the outline of the tube. The hash marks are the center line radius, which I've already drilled to secure the tube to this sheet. I'm using the 18 gauge sheet metal. I could do this with my flush firewall, but if I screw that up, I'm back to square one. So it's easier to use this as a transition piece. Well, after a ton of hammer forming, planishing, and stretching, I have this intermediate piece mocked up and in place. Filling in the gaps nicely, both sides. Now you can see how these two flanges will accept that center radius piece. I'm still not 100% satisfied with the front detail. I've tried to stretch this pocket below the tube and transition to that curved piece. A little more work, make it a little more pronounced. Design is critical thinking and creative problem solving. It's the next day and I've had the entire evening to challenge my thinking on this detail. I always envisioned this edge being recessed back further than what I'm able to do easily by stretching it. And more importantly is the face connection of my firewall. I don't want to simply butt weld it to the front face of this bar. I really do want to wrap it around the tube. Now we're talking. But now I've lost my connection back to my given, my tube. So to mock this up in proper place so I can continue to fab the hump is problematic. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a temporary piece that connects the tube to this flange. Okay, looking good. Time to pivot one more time. As much as I'd like this to be the firewall, the access to weld on the bench and connect this transition to my inner piece and weld both sides far outweighs any advantage that wrapping the 14 gauge around the edge would provide. Here's the progression of the piece one more time. The bar and that transition piece just roughly placed. I need to trim some of the excess material to get it to fit down into its proper position, and I'll bring you back. Little flexible tape template. I'm going to leave it a little big so I have some flexibility. Extremely pleased with the fab work. Next step is to weld this transition piece together and then weld the bar into the car. Next video we'll deal with the weld up and installation. Be sure to like and subscribe. Till then, cheers.